This is I Love Black People Radio on H.U.R. Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.
And welcome to I Love Black People again. We're just so blessed today to have a wonderful guest, someone who's doing and has been doing so much courageous and wonderful work, selfless work for our people. I'm going to introduce you to someone who I've known for quite some time and thought this would be a great time for us to reconnect, Dr. Carla Braley. I'm going to let her say some things about herself, give her a little, I probably wouldn't do the good doctor, the just do that should. So I'm going to, Sister Carla, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, Sinclair, let me just say thank you very much. This is such an honor, and also just real pleasurable situation since we haven't talked in some time. For the listeners, I am Carla Braley. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor in the state of Texas. I'm a native Houstonian, and I tell people by way of Louisiana, and I mention that because so many people relocated from Louisiana to Houston, and my parents moved here just really to be able to be a part of what we call have more options or opportunities to experience the American dream. After growing up in Houston and matriculating through public school system, I went off to Texas State University, which was LBJ school, and came back home for about a year or so and found my way in Washington, D.C., attending the Mecca, Howard University. And so I have 3 degrees from Howard, Sinclair. I have my master's in counseling psychology. I have a master's of divinity, so religion. And then I have a PhD in sociology, with my area primarily focused on social inequality and urban studies. And all of that was done at Howard. And then after that, I'm sure I bumped into you on the yard, but I really bumped into you in serving with our former mayor, Adrian Fenty, where I served as the executive director of community affairs, and before then, the director of boards and commissions, and serving as his senior religious affairs advisor. So I did that for a few years, and then I gave birth to Marley J, and decided I was going to move back home, and moved back home for, I guess I've been back in Houston for about 13 years. And more so than anything, I tell people I'm a mother. I'm an educator of over 20 years. I'm a public servant leader, and most recently served as the former vice chair of the Texas Democratic Party. I actually stepped down to run Sinclair. And it was in that serving in that capacity that I even got to learn more of Texas, because, growing up as a child and as a teenager and as a college student, it's different when you become a professional and a public servant in that way. So just traveling across the state and getting an idea of what kind of issues are really impacting Texans, regardless if they're Democrats, Republicans, or independents, so many issues that you all are experiencing nationally that is being impacted by what's happening in the state of Texas. And I also serve as a professor of sociology at Texas Southern University.
Well, that was quite a bit, and I know you're more than well qualified. And this is probably a good question, because I almost did it, and it would have been inappropriate. But I think there's an interesting point about being a Black woman running for political office. One of the things I was going to say, and again, just keep it in context, because I think it's a good way to segue into what it means to be a Black woman running. I was going to say, and I thought it was going to be a compliment, but it was definitely a misogynistic piece. I was going to say, and she's just as beautiful as she is brilliant. Now, if you was a male, would I have said that? I probably would. He's just as handsome. And I think that's inappropriate. And I look at some of the things that it must be, difficult to deal with with a male candidate, they can roll up their sleeves, have some sweat, look a little disheveled, no one even, he looks hard working. But if it's a sister, because of this, sexist, misogynistic space, you have one hair out of place. Well, maybe she didn't have her act together. What's wrong? I mean, this might be coming even from a woman, and it was so interesting with these spaces, even when I'm talking about race and white supremacy and these little things. I talk about, and I try to relate when I'm talking to people, in general. I say, we as men, and when there's no women around, I say, look, we benefit from certain things that women don't have access to. And even if there's not a man in the room, other women can act out a misogynistic space where they're not going to listen to you. But if a male had said it, they would have taken it just as well. And I just think it's interesting that, maybe you can speak to it again. And let's even talk about that. I'm asking you to speak to it. But if you were a male candidate, would I say, does it feel like to be a man running? I wouldn't say that, but I do think it's worth talking about because there are some things there. And I think you're somebody that could actually speak to it in a way that could help other women and really the men who are perpetrating this behavior could also stand to hear some things about it. And it seems like you're, it's Black History Month. It seems like you're making history anyway in this regard in Texas. So what could you tell us some about that? Maybe use that?
Yeah, you're asking me to put on my sociology hat. So yes, I'm the only Black woman to run on this state ticket. I'm the first African-American woman to run at the top of the ticket in the state of Texas. And, quite frankly, I appreciate your high level of consciousness, because the first thing is just to be aware of some of the language and messaging and that we do on either side, whether it be race, gender, sexuality, whatever, that's facing us. And quite frankly, as women, we're actually taught to be perfect, right? We're not always taught to necessarily compete, but we are taught that, we have to look that part. We have to be that part. We have to be refined. And that's particularly important in politics because particularly when you run as a candidate, nothing is perfect. If you wait to the most perfect time, you're not going to run. And if we don't run, then we don't have the representation that so many people need, who actually is being, impacted by a lot of the policies and issues that face African Americans, particularly as it relates to healthcare and education. And I can name a list of those. Because oftentimes as African American candidates, there's always the issue around raising money. And we know that, raising money not only impacts your ability to reach out and have that messaging that you need, but it also speaks to your viability. And that's what so many people talk. Well, can he raise the money? Can she raise the money? And if she raised the money, how much is she going to raise and how much more after that? So it's always like this mark. Okay, well, we told her 100,000. She comes back, she raises 100,000. And then after that, it's like, well, but can you raise 50,000 more? So to answer your question, the very notion of beauty, a woman, and at the end of the day, as a former political strategist, I shouldn't say former because I'm still a political strategist, but sometimes the look matters, and whatever that look is, and I don't know if that falls under beauty, Sinclair, but I do know that people will remember, just like a famous person or an actor, people remember the look, that person has. And so you just happen to identify me as beauty, and I'll take that. But, the reality is it's going to take beauty, more than beauty, to win. And it's going to take more than beauty to lead. And so you're right. So when you beauty, you're beautiful and you're brilliant, then you got to be bold, right? To be able to make the move to even get in some of these races that are not always the most pleasant for us, or not welcomed oftentimes for us to enter. And when I say us, I mean Black candidates, particularly Black women.
Awesome. And I appreciate that. And that's what I'm saying. I think you're right. I would never think I could ever actually understand, but like you said, to be aware and to try to be better. Which is an active and it's a verb. So maybe it's not a verb. I think it's an adverb, better. But anyway, my point is, as we keep trying to do better than what we did in the past, I appreciate that. I think now you're kind of giving us some of the pieces of what's going on, and this lieutenant governor. Why don't you share with the audience what you're currently doing? And I think what would be helpful, because when people think about Texas, they think about some of this voter suppression that's been going on, but also, I think this gives us an opportunity to talk about, the federal versus state. We do talk about how Biden is doing, and we can agree to disagree on what we think of that. But literally looking at the fact that there's an executive at the state level, and how many Black governors are there, and then how many Black lieutenant governors are there in the country. And I think it'd be helpful to kind of give people some understanding, from the elected lieutenant governor position, what are those things that impact or on policy and everybody's everyday quality of life. And also as you talk about it, give some information about this particular Texas, the deadline timelines of what's going on there.
I'll try to follow that long intro, but
I'm gonna tighten it up. I'm gonna be short. I apologize. We're gonna keep it tight. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna go straight. Like, look, the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas is known to be the most powerful position in the state. Many of you all around the nation have heard about, the number of special sessions that our governor called during this last session. Particularly, one of the issues that came down dealt with the voter suppression, right? The voters bill. But the reality is the lieutenant governor actually leads the Senate and actually determines the senators who gets appointments to lead those committees, and then determines how bills actually matriculate through those committees. And then after that, determines if they even make it to the agenda. And then if they make it to the agenda, then it determines how will they be brought to the floor. So you can call 50 special sessions, but if you have a lieutenant governor that's balanced, that, brings some civility to the Senate regardless, because in the state of Texas, Sinclair, even this go round, whatever happens, it's still not going to be a majority in this sense, Republican. So some of the things that we're seeing that's happening in the state won't necessarily have like this big bang of a change. But what you can see happen is that when I'm elected to lieutenant governor, it's those appointments that are made to address things like voter suppression. Like in the state of Texas, we're dealing with like Jim Crow 2.2. Most recent, this last Senate attempted to actually pit two major congressional districts together, which would have been Congressman Al Green and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, which, by the way, her seat was from the late, great Honorable Barbara Jordan. So what we saw is that they were actually attempting to join those congressional districts and actually lose, to a certain degree, representation. And so really, at the end of the day, we want government to be fair. And what is fair? Fair is to make sure that all the electorate has representation, because all of us, have different voices, different lived experiences, different needs. And when we're doing that, then at the end of the day, yes, you always want to serve with people that have similar ideologies, but at the end of the day, in values, but we're all elected to serve people, right? And that may mean in politics, like when I'm teaching Sinclair, I say, look, at the end of the day, politics is not politics without an exchange. There's going to be an exchange. There's going to be compromise. And that's where the civility that we had somewhat throughout history, that's another discussion for another call, for another show. But, the reality is when we do that, when we serve in a way that we're putting people at the center of these policies, then we're able to get things like an increase in minimum wage. We have people that are working, 3 jobs, and they're literally robbing Peter to pay Paul, but they're doing everything we taught them to do, right? They're working hard. They're even trying to save the extra dollar. But then when you have a flat tire and you're already making minimum wage, then you're still robbing Peter to pay Paul. And those are the things that are not taken in consideration. In the state of Texas, we have some of the highest uninsured rates of all the states. We're leaving like millions of dollars on the table because we won't accept any support or a partner with federal government. This is what's happening in the state of Texas. And I know you knew what happened, last year, this time, that we're all saying, oh my God, what happens if we have a drastic winter? What is going to happen in the state of Texas? Are we going to have lights? Like, everything is big in Texas, Sinclair, but everyone, rich, someone who's not so rich, still asking the same questions. Is the power grid okay? And all because we're lone rangers in the state of Texas. Like, we're independent and we want to work, solely, but only like 1% are actually experiencing the good from that, whatever that good is, and that's profit. So that's kind of where we are in the state of Texas, and the lieutenant governor plays a huge role on those type of appointments, the agenda, and even a role in what the budget looks like. And it's time that we have someone that's really leading on behalf of the people.
Now, what are some of the dates? So I know so you're running as a Democrat, and there's a primary, and then there's a general. I would take it sometime further in the year. And how long is the term? Maybe some of those kind of details, just to give people a thumbnail sketch.
Well, we in Houston, Texas, we have started early vote right now. Early vote started on Love Day, on Valentine's Day. So I'm telling people, we got to love the hate out of Texas. That's the only way we're going to get better. And so it starts today through February 25th. Election day is Tuesday, March the 1st. So it's going on right now. We have a chance to change Texas and have this historical mark in the state of Texas with having a Black woman as lieutenant governor that, will make a world of a difference. And I'll tell you, Sinclair, how goes Texas goes the nation. And when we study history, we can see how impactful Texas has been in history of our nation.
Yeah, you know what? Because you make me think of that. Because when we think about midterm elections, we normally think about the congressional federal elections, but not these down, or not. It's still executive. It's at the top of the ticket. Okay, so with that being said, looking at where you are now, what's going to get you across that finish line where the tape hits your chest and you get your hands up? What type of, how can people reach you? What are some of the things that you're doing that you can make us aware of so they know?
Well, good. That, number one, we get over the top by reaching the people. We can reach the people through volunteers, that being, through texting, through phone banking, and also contributions. And Sinclair, I tell everyone, please don't ever think that any contribution is too small. The reality is you can purchase a yard sign with $3 and some change. And a yard sign matters because it creates visibility. So that's the thing in this election, the visibility part. How do you reach the people? Digital. So when you now know about this election, you now know about me. So I need you to share the posts that are out there. When you see something, make sure if it's digital, click on it. That matters in terms of determining your impressions. And that's what we have to do. We have to be visible, and we have to unapologetically intentional support one another. And if we do that, then we find ways. And I'm telling everyone, hey, it's very important to vote. We have to actually vote our way out of this stuff that's going on in Texas. Like, they're trying to suppress the vote, and we have to make sure, in order to be able to make some changes, we go and vote. But we have to multiply the vote. So if you're already a voter, go find 10 people. Commit to finding 10 people that you can get to vote. Commit to sending out 10 texts to, make people aware that voting is happening and who you're voting for and happening. Put Karla Braley on your list. But also, sharing the post, sharing emails, all of these things are happening when candidates run. They're taking all of these modes, all of these approaches to create visibility, but also raise money. And then visit my website. Let me know what you think. If it's something that's missing that should be there, or, you may get just additional information. And that's at www.carlafortexas.com. And there you can sign up to volunteer, join the campaign. You can contribute. You can find out more about our campaign.
And that's Karla with a C.
That's Karla with the C, all day long.
Okay. And then are there any other ways they can reach you besides the website?
Yeah, they can. You can call us at 214-227-8100. I think the best way is via the website. It goes, directly to staff as well, but we are available by phone.
How about email? Is there an email?
Yeah, it is. Info@carlafortexas.com. Info@carlafortexas.com.
And is that for? I know this gets weird. Is it
Yeah.
for or is it
It's the word
FOR?
for
It's the
FOR. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
FOR. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. FOR. Awesome. All right. Well, is there anything that you think that we need to make sure these folks know about the issues that are facing Texas, how this relates to them? I mean, I'm sure we have listeners that are, live in California, got family in Texas, folks that live in DC, got family in Texas. Are there any things that when you start talking about critical issues that right now are before the people that you see that folks need to be like, look, if we don't get this right, these are the consequences?
I think protection of our rights in the state of Texas, anything that has rights is really being challenged in the state of Texas. Voter rights, women's rights, trans rights, whatever rights are that can potentially be taken away, we're seeing that happen in the state of Texas. I really do believe that we are facing an anti-democratic movement, and it's happening and it's moving. It's gaining the momentum in the state of Texas. And we all have to be cautious about what happens in Texas because it's so big, and which means that it can impact other states, and it does. And history shows that Texas is right in the middle of all that. And if we can flip Texas, we can flip this nation for a very long time. So that means if you're in California, you're living good and with some high level democratic values, we need your help. Because at the end of the day, if we have California, we have Texas, we're going to be able to really do some work that can bring forth some change for people. And then I'll say this, the state of Texas, we have some of the lowest rates as it relates to education. But what the state of Texas does is has a high profit margin for textbooks. So when we hear about things like critical race theory, and we hear, things that, that contribute to Black folks as being laborers and involuntary laborers instead of involuntary, acknowledging the whole, slave issue that impact many of us and our families. Those are the kind of things that are happening in Texas textbooks. And Texas is $1 billion industry. And they decide not only the books for Texas because it's so large, that means that those publishers use that same material and spread that or use it or utilize it in other states. And that's why we have to be very cognizant about what's happening in the state of Texas.
What are you hearing? Like, I know what we see on these corporate media outlets, and I'm calling them corporates because somebody does own them. That being said, when you're talking to regular folks on the street or at the doors, knocking on doors, we know about knocking on doors. What are they saying? I know they're not. I'm sure they're not using sophisticated words about. I think they're. No, don't let me say that. What are when you think about this last week or two, talking to real live, real voters, not what the pundits or the consultants have said, or pollsters. What are like real folks saying when you talk to them?
Well, I mean, hey, real folks are saying both on a Democrat and Republican and independent, we need different leadership in the state of Texas because even small businesses are hurting. And some of them being business owners that would probably say that they're Republicans. But because of some of the policies related to even immigration, they don't have the workers that they need. The compliance issues that they're facing, it's hurting their profit. And quite frankly, in the 21st century, I don't think you're going to come across even too many corporate owners who are looking to restrict voter rights and women's rights in the 21st century. I mean, we're living in a day that we just know too much not to, expand. And so you have some corporate owners who even left the state of Texas, right, because of the policies that were moving forth in our state, pro-mask. And so that's why you saw some of the rates that we were having in the state of Texas. The lieutenant governor, the current lieutenant governor, actually alluded that Black people were the problem related to the spreading of African American of COVID. Oh yeah, these are things that are being said. Like Karla Braley isn't making up this. This is like fact check Karla Braley today. And this was what's happening in the state of Texas.
Wow, misinformation, and again, using that mix plus power, that's a dangerous cocktail. Oof. Yeah, Texas is big, and we're on a Howard University Sirius XM station, and so she's HU, so we definitely
And
want
H.U. is coming through for me, Sinclair, on the 21st. So we're gonna have a big celebration for Howard's daughter. We're gonna do that on the 21st, and
21st
anyone can come, but we're definitely reaching out to our other bison.
Show you right. Well, thank you again, Karla. Just want to tell you that we're gonna keep you in prayer, keep you lifted up, and thank God for your courage. A lot of us are just keeping our heads down and taking care of our job and just our family. For you to be willing to sacrifice and give your service to our people like this is amazing. So, with that being said, thank you, sis. As we always close with, I am because we are, and I definitely am because of our amazing, good sister, Dr. Carla Brady. Thank you, Braley.
This is I Love Black People Radio on H.U.R. Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to iloveblackpeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.